Greetings and welcome. We are in Senior AP English, and we're now back for our final comments on Goethe's Faust. And we're going to begin on page 45 of the volume that we're working with as we begin to converse a little bit about the primary issues underlying the plot line of Faust. If you're working with notes, and I hope you are, let's begin here. I'll ask just a series of "it gets dark at night" obvious types of questions, and then we'll move from there to the more complicated ones. If you had to reduce this story of Faust 1, and that's really where we're going to stay, Faust 1, part 1. If you had to reduce the story down to a single line, what would it be for you? Like, for example, on the outside, somebody says, "Dude, what are you doing at AP?" And you go, "Oh, we're doing this text called Faust." And they go, "What's a Faust?" And you say, "Well, it's a story about..." What would you say it's about in one line? Jot that one down. Let's start there. Number 2. If you had a little bit more erudite interlocutor, a little brighter questioner, who would say to you, "So you're working with Faust. I'm assuming it's some kind of classic work of lit, or it wouldn't end up on an AP reading list." Yeah, it's pretty famous. In fact, when we listened to a cat named Mike Segru talk about it, he talked about it as probably one of the most famous works in all of literature. Well, if it's a famous work of literature, it probably has some kind of central conflict, or fight, or challenge, or struggle. And you'd say, yeah. And he were to say to you, well, what is it? What is the central fight? What is the central conflict? What would you say? The central conflict. Jot that one down. Again, we'll come back to answer these questions. Writing the answers down for you is a good way to start to get a sense of how you think about the text. Question 3. If you had a really intelligent interlocutor who'd actually read Faust, when you said, "I'm studying Faust," he might go, "Ah, yes, Faust, the deal with the devil. Good one, good one." Question he might ask. Question to you. Do you consider Faust a hero or a villain? Do you see him heroic, or do you see him as a scumbag? But if you had someone, let's just say, who gets paid to do the questions asking to students for a living, that is to say, not only somebody that's read this text but studied the text, he might ask this question: what do you think Goethe thinks about Faust? I'm not asking what you think now. That's what you just wrote down. I'm asking, do you think Goethe thinks that Faust is a hero or a villain? Scumbag. And how would you know? Now, obviously, we got to jump into Faust 2 to answer that final question, don't we? At least the final moments of Faust 2. That same interlocutor who knows a little bit about the poem might say something else like this, and I will. The deal with the devil is fairly intriguing. The old "sell your soul to the devil" we'll talk about here in a moment. It's a very ancient motif. The devil comes. The devil makes a deal with some human, and almost always the bargain is the soul. For those of you, of course, who are great fans of "O Brother, Where Art Thou?", the observation was, well, you said, "You sold your everlasting soul?" And he says, "Well, I wasn't doing anything with it at the time." All kinds of dark irony in that line. You sell your soul to the devil. But the agreement in Faust is, Mephistopheles is going to damn Faust only at the moment that Faust says what? Jot down the line. What is it that Faust must say? Oh, obviously, I'm prepping you for the exam now. What is it that Faust must say? The minute Faust says it, Mephistopheles has him. Great, I got him. What is it? Does anyone remember what it is that Faust must say? Mr. Kelleher, do you remember what it is? You don't have to say it in German, just what is it in English in translation. You remember? The deal is, I'll give you whatever you want. I'll be your genie in a bottle. Whatever you want. You get it from me. But you can never say what words. Do you remember what they are? Does anyone remember? Batson, do you recall?
Stay, moment, stay, thou art so fair.
Stay, moment, stay, thou art so fair.
Sorry for the interruption. Annie
seems
Butterfield,
to-
wherever you are in the building,
Which
would you come
seems
to the
to
office,
suggest what? Stay, moment, stay, thou art so fair. Means what? Ah, that's the key. He's content in that moment. In other words, he's had enough of experience. This one experience is enough. Jump to 3A real quickly. For John Keats, the night before he died, what was that moment for him? Do you remember? What was it? Do you remember Bright Star laying his head where?
Oh,
On the ripening breast of his young girlfriend? He says, that would be it for me. Right? Right? That would be enough. To just feel the rise and fall of her breath. That's enough for me. That is to say, stay moment, stay, thou art so fair. I don't want anything other than this. That is a very interesting idea. He's going to give Faust the opportunity to have any experience he wants. Let's play, Mr. Schreiber, a 3B game real quickly. It's a fun game to play. We are not alone in playing it. It's been played ever since this text was published. 3B question. If somehow or another, through some strange twist of, we'll call it fate, destiny, magic, whatever you want to call it, Mephistopheles, if you could have any experience you wanted in life, anything, the genie in the bottle came to you and said, I'm not wishing you 3 wishes so you get to wish for 10,000 wishes and all that. I'll give you whatever you want, but you're going to have to start with 1 wish. What would that be for you? Jot it down real quickly. If I were to say to you, I will give you anything you want, and I mean anything. I mean, you can have anything you want. You can have money, power, fame. You can have lots of stuff. I can make you fall in love with anyone you want and have them fall in love with you. I can make you older. I can make you younger. I can make you look different than you look now. Totally look different. I can do whatever you want. Whatever that is, I can do it. I can take you back in time. I can take you forwards in time. I can give you whatever you want. And there's no limit on the wishing. In fact, Mephistopheles says to Faust, I want to give you again and again and again experiences that you've not had before. I want to do that with you. But the only deal is, you never get to say about any of those experiences, oh, this is a good one. I want this one. This is enough. This is enough. What would be the first thing you'd request? Jot it down. I sometimes ask these questions and students are like, well, that's too hard a question and I can't write it down. And I say, write it down. Try to write it down. And some of you will immediately witness, oh, it's not so easy to answer that question. I mean, a lot of things come to my mind. But what would be the very first one? And do you think there's ever anyone that writes down the first request to Mephistopheles would be, leave me alone? Now that's an interesting question. Do you think it's possible, now we're to Plato, aren't we, that Mephistopheles would ever come to a human being on this planet who's ever lived and whoever will live and explain the rules of the game in the language I've just explained it? Do whatever you want. Literally, whatever you want, I will give it to you. And the individual would say, leave me alone. And now, Miss Damiano, we'll play a game here where we jump to 3A real quick. And we'll say, wait a minute, that's happened in literature. In a really famous book. Probably the most famous book of all the famous books. Ironically, we don't read much of it in this class. What is the most famous book in Western literature? It's the book that stands above all the other books. Yeah, it's a religious text, isn't it? It's a Judeo-Christian Bible, isn't it? When you walk into motel rooms, you normally don't have the collected works of Shakespeare sitting in the drawer. By the way, that observation I just made is as prescient now as it was when you were juniors, and I recommend it in your summer. You might want to pick the book up and read it. There was a reason why I suggested that. And it wasn't religious at all. We have a gig. What do you mean we have a gig? Yeah, we have a story. We have a story just like this. Mr. Schreiber, what is that story from the Judeo-Christian New Testament? Do you recall?
Yeah. I remember.
Mr. Batson is going to play games trying to help us out by saying jump, jump. Now, why is jump, jump helping us out? Ms. Damiano, do you know this story? The question is, in the Judeo-Christian New Testament, we have this story of Mephistopheles coming to a human being and saying, anything you want, I give it to you. And the human being saying in response, go away.
Yeah.
Mr. Batson, enlighten.
Well, they were right. That was wrong. It was Jesus in the desert when he was tempted by Satan.
Right?
No.
Right? We have a very famous story. Jesus Christ, early on in the story of Matthew, chapter 3, for those of you interested in following this one down and Googling it, supposedly is met by Mephistopheles. By the way, Goethe knows this story pretty well. Right? And the devil will try and make a deal. And the response is, go away. Leave me alone. Do you think that's the way most humans would respond to this? I'll give you whatever you want. Is the text Faust intended to teach how to choose something like that? Is that what it's about? All right, let's go back over our questions, shall we? You wrote them down so that we could go back over them. An interlocutor who has no idea about Faust hears that you're studying Faust and says, what's it about? Ms. Cottrell, what would you say Faust is about in one line? Just reduce it down to one line for us. It's a story about what?
Well, the dude who's speaking on the screen talked a lot about finding the value of the world.
Yeah, but you're giving us a more complicated answer. Remember, our interlocutor here has no idea who Faust is. So literally, you're going to have to give the most simple answer possible. What would you say? One line. Because an interlocutor who asks the question, Faust, what's it about, is only interested in 30 seconds and then going to shut down. Not interested in learning anything, is probably just being polite. Really? Faust, what's a Faust? And you would say, what? In one line. What would you say, Donna? It's a story about what?
This dude is met by another dude and offered the chance to be given whatever he wants.
Keep going. We could even reduce it more simple than that. It's a story about a guy who sells his soul to the devil.
Yeah.
Right? Sells his soul to the devil. It's the famous sell your soul to the devil storyline. Faust, of course, is the famous story of sell your soul to the devil. Only it's Mephistopheles, right? But some of you will say, well, that's true. That's a really simplistic understanding of what this text is about. Because that doesn't mention anything, for example, about poor little Gretchen. Wait a minute, who's poor little Gretchen? Who is Gretchen in the story? She's the Ophelia of the story, isn't she? Goethe loved the play Hamlet. He considered that the greatest work of all time. Of course, Gretchen is the Ophelia of our play. Who is Gretchen? What's she like? She is Blake's Songs of Innocence, isn't she? She is the little lamb who made thee. Dost thou know who made thee, right? Okay. She's so pretty, and she's so kind, and she's so nice. But most importantly, she's so stupid. She's really, really stupid, isn't she? She sees a hot guy. All hot guys are nice. That's because they're hot. And if they're hot, they have to be nice. Oh yeah, it's even better if they wear Gucci suits and they drive a brand new Mercedes. Then they really must be nice. And if they really like to spend their money on me, they really must be nice. All hot guys with lots of money that want to spend it on me, obviously really, really nice. And then he starts giving me stuff, and he speaks nice words to me, must be really nice. I'll go ahead and sleep with them and then hope everything works out. Wait a minute, 3A. 3A. See, we're always backward looking as we're forward looking. I mean, the minute I say that, some of you will go, well, that sounds pretty modern. But wait a minute, we're in an ancient tradition on that count. What's the most famous story about a girl who decides to sleep with a guy on the promise he will marry her, only to discover the next morning, off he goes, sailing away to conquer all of Italy and to become the founder of Rome? Who is that girl? What's her name? Dido. I'm joined by brilliant scholars this morning. Dido. What's the title of that text?
Aeneid.
Aeneid, right. Who wrote that poem? Virgil wrote that poem, and that's the most famous poem of jilted lover of all time. Remember, in the Aeneid, Virgil gets to take, he has Aeneas take a trip down into the underworld. Do you remember? And in the underworld, Aeneas is kind of walking around, oh, you know, there's all these people. And then all of a sudden he looks around, and their eyes meet. It's Dido, it's his girl. It's the one he said, yeah, sure. I'd love to marry you. But we got to kind of make sure that it works out. So let's do this sleep together thing, and then we'll figure it out. And the next morning, the story of Gretchen is even more tragic, though. Yeah, she's pregnant. She's the jilted lover who's also pregnant. And then Mephistopheles, hey, it was real nice seeing you. I got to go. I got Victoria's Secret model. Remember, I can get whatever girl I want. He feels kind of bad about it, doesn't he? Or does he? Does he feel kind of bad about it or no? This, by the way, is the reason you want to read the poem. He's conflated. He's not sure how he feels about it. He really liked her. What he really liked about her was her innocence. Of course, the minute that he ruins her innocence, ooh, that's intriguing, isn't it? It's complicated at that point, as they say on Facebook. It's complicated then, isn't it? Right? Okay? She has a child. She commits suicide. Why she commits suicide? She also kills her own child. Why? So Segru made a point of this, and I think Goethe's making a point as well of this. Why?
Guilt.
It is. That's the word, right? Guilt, isn't it? And in that regard, saying it's a story about a guy who sold his soul to the devil seems a little too simpleton, doesn't it? Because it forgoes this other side of the equation. So maybe now we want to amplify a bit. What is it a story about, Miss Sin? How would you say it now? Include some of this stuff about Gretchen and include some of this stuff about guilt. It's a story about what? How would you qualify it in a line or two? It's a story about a guy named Faust. We said yesterday, what kind of guy? Happy? He's way sad. Way sad. Why is he so sad? Why is he so depressed? Why is he so lugubrious? He's unsatisfied. Good, that's a great adjective. So let's write that one down. This is a story about a really unsatisfied billionaire. I mean, he could make money if he wanted to. And because he's so unsatisfied, he's bored. And because he's bored, he decides to make a deal with the devil. Right?
That's what his name is, dude.
And so Mephistopheles comes along dressed up as a... Page 45, that's why I put it there. Page 45, he comes in as a what? Maybe Goethe just didn't like poodles, I don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah, there's those little dogs, those little yappers. You know, those kind of dogs? That's how the devil shows up. He shows up as a dog. It's kind of funny, Eve says. Of course, Goethe's playing a Platonist game as well. If you can remember from the Republic, Socrates says, teaching a bunch of seniors in AP English is like watching puppies at play, biting on their ears, each other's ears. Have you ever been in a pet store and watched several dogs in a cage that are puppies? And they're all like, yip, 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 and then they bite on each other, you know, biting on the ears. That's Socrates' view of what students are like for the most part. He says they like to bite, and they like to bark, and they like to poop, and they like to belch, but they got no idea why. That's Socrates' view. He says that's how most students are. They just kind of methodically, robotically do what they're told and learn what they're supposed to learn. And then they grow up to run the country. No wonder the country's so screwed up. That's Socrates' view. Maybe you should go back and read Republic again. It's a wonderful word picture. And now Mephistopheles shows up as a dog, a little yapper. And he says, what? You're there at it, page 45. What's he say? What's the very first thing Mephistopheles says to crazy... What does he say to Faust? Mephistopheles, first thing he says on page 45. What does he say to him?
Why all the noise?
Dude, what's with all the noise? Can I be of service? Let me help you out. I'll help you out. I'll give you whatever you want. Now, you can, if you're not a very sophisticated reader, right? And a lot of readers have read this poem this way. You can see this as a tale. Shame, shame, if the devil ever comes to you as a dog, never make a deal with the devil. Okay. But remember what I said about sophisticated readers of Frankenstein? Sophisticated readers of Frankenstein did not read that novel as, shame, shame, you shouldn't try and bring people back from the dead. No, a sophisticated reader of that book realizes That is all mythology. When you start reading books about people coming back from the dead, you got to kind of, have a second thought about it. Like, yeah, right, okay, right? So in the same way, when you're reading Faust, you find yourself, if you're unsophisticated, saying, oh, well, this is just a story about how you should make deals with the devil. But if you're a sophisticated reader, now we're to the next question that I asked. What are you supposed to learn from a text like this? Question, is Faust a hero, or is he a villain? Is he the bad guy of the play, of the poem? How do you think of him? How many of you want to argue he's a hero? Thank you, Mr. Schreiber. How come? Mr. Schreiber says, clearly Faust is the hero of our poem.
He fits all the characteristics of an epic hero.
Whoa, this is important. We want to write this one down. Maybe Schreiber, after he finishes being an MD, he'll come and, be a lecturer in 303 for literature as well. He says, if you think about it, Goethe's playing a really old game. It started with Homer. You have Achilles. Then you have Odysseus. Then you have Virgil's Aeneas. Those are all epic heroes. We could name a few more, couldn't we? Oh, that's why we read all of those last semester. Right.
Yeah, but were they actually heroes?
Now that starts to beg a really interesting question. When you look at Odysseus, as Dante did, the question isn't, how many of the things he did do I want to be just like? The question for Dante is, what circle of hell do I put him in? Why? Why? Why for Dante is he going to put Odysseus in circles of hell?
Oh, for being on the island with Calypso.
He clearly sees Odysseus breaking all of the rules, which Mr. Schreiber points out is the whole bloody point. That's the point of the epic hero. They're not these clean, squeaky clean guys who never do anything wrong. As a matter of fact, they leave behind them unbelievable carnage. I mean, in the history of epic heroes, probably the superhero of them all, and I'm sure Sheldon on Big Bang Theory would argue with me about this, and rightfully so, but probably the hero of them all is Aeneas. I mean, he's the most squeaky clean of them all. And I already mentioned Aeneas as saying, yeah, sure, Dido, let's go in a cave. That's what it's for anyway. Let's just go in there, we'll do this thing, I'll marry you, and then I get to be king and you get to be queen, it's going to be great. And the next morning, he's on a boat sailing away. Poor Dido, she's the jilted lover. But that's Aeneas. All right, Schreiber, you don't get away so easy, though. You're telling us that in this poem, a guy who sells his soul to the devil, sleeps intentionally deceiving a poor young virgin, much younger than him, way younger than him, impregnates her, abandons her, she kills her child and herself, her poor stupid brother comes back to defend her honor, he kills him too, by cheating, we might add. You want that to be an epic hero for us? What's heroic about Faust for you? We'll get to Goethe in a second. Let's ask a 3B question first. What's heroic about Faust to you as a character? Because he obviously does some really nasty stuff.
His path is to learn about himself, like life in general, and at the end of the poem, he completes his journey.
He's a discoverer.
Yeah.
He's an Odyssean character. Only notice by the time Goethe's writing the poem, we're not going on journeys like in boats over oceans. We're not going into Hades and visiting with Tiresias. We're not fighting against Polyphemus. We have a different kind of adventure story. Really? What kind of adventure story is it then? Mr. Schreiber says it's the journey of discovery. All right. Well, let's ask that question then, because I think, by the way, Goethe would very much appreciate that Mr. Schreiber points out that Faust is something more than a villain that's somehow a propaedeutic about don't sleep with innocent girls, impregnate them, and then leave them. I mean, clearly Goethe would say, that's not a good idea. I mean, I don't think he's celebrating this as something to be emulated, or actions to be modeled. But there's clearly something else going on here, and I think Mr. Schreiber's onto an important observation. What is it? So now we'll ask the question from Goethe's perspective. What is it that Faust discovers? Can you even jot it down in a line? What does he discover? himself.
Satisfaction.
He discovers satisfaction. At the very end of his life, he finally is able to say, "Stay moment, thou art so fair." Mephistopheles thinks he's won. But Goethe makes God say, no, he's not lost. He's actually saved. What does he learn from all of those experiences? And now I'll ask a really interesting 3B question. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Batson, and then I'll ask it.
The one thing Mephistopheles can't, which is love.
Whoa, now this is real interesting, and this makes Goethe a really important romantic writer for us. I'll rephrase for Mr. Batson. Faust learns the one thing that Mephistopheles can never, ever experience. He learns what it means to love. And in that discovery, Faust's life is redeemed. Is that at all close to beauty is truth, truth, beauty? That's all you know on earth and all you need to know. I was waiting for somebody to ask that question in my lecture on Ode to a Grecian Earth. Beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That's all you know on earth? What about love? Which is higher, beauty, truth, or love?
The way that Keats approached it, they were all interchangeable.
Because he's a Platonist. In that second box, they all are interchangeable virtues. Let's ask a 3B question, and this makes a lot of fun to answer now the question of yesterday. Dude, yesterday, what was with that lecture? You're like totally jacking with our entire high school career. Here we are. We've been like working like busy bees getting all this work done, and then all of a sudden you come along with a lecture like that and basically just shell shock everything we've been doing by asking what's the point of it. Today, now we're ready to ask it again. Only we'll ask it a different way. And this is what makes reading these texts so important for us. It runs something like this. At the end of his life, Faust discovers the real value of life is love. That's at the end of his life. You are about to finish high school. A 3B question. What would you say you have discovered through the first 17, 18, 19 years of your life? Especially in your last 4 years of high school. Have you had a Faustian discovery? Or is it too early, do you think? Do you have to have a little bit of distance still to be able to have... Like, for example, dude, I can't answer the question, what have I learned in high school? But I definitely can tell you what I learned through that experience of middle school. The reason is simple. I'm done with middle school, pretty much completely done with it. So I can look back and qualify it in some way. I learned something through the experience, and this is kind of what I learned. During the experience of middle school, dude, I was just trying to get through it. I didn't have time to understand it. I had no way to qualify it. I had to get to high school. And during high school now, I've been kind of doing this thing called high school. I haven't had time to qualify it, which means maybe I'll understand it better after high school. What did you learn through high school? Are you yet ready to qualify it? Is there anything you can kind of say, oh, well, even though I had to do all that crap, and that's pretty much what it was, at least I learned, and then you draw a little line on your paper. At least I can hold on to that. At least there was one thing of value I learned, kind of like Faust. I'll ask it a different way. Is there one moment in high school for you? About that moment, you are prepared to say, about that moment, stay, moment, thou art so fair. Is there one moment you can qualify from the last 4 years about which you are prepared to say, I'd go back and do that again and again and again? Remember Nietzsche's eternal reoccurrence, right? About your life, the moment you die, you'll go back and relive every single event in your life exactly the same way. And then you die. And you go back, and again you live. Again, every single event of your life. Let's say today, you're driving home, whatever. Somebody rear ends you, and that's it. You don't even have time to make it to the emergency room before you're flatline. Nietzsche says, play the game. You immediately are reborn in the very life that you've lived to do it all over again. Everything will be exactly the same. That's the game of Groundhog Day. Bill Murray's film, obviously. But we'll just stick with the 4 years of high school now. That means every decision you made. That means every action that you committed. That means every word that you spoke. You have to do it again. And again. And again. And again. You're trapped to do it over and over and over. Would that be a curse or would that be a blessing? Nietzsche asks. And oh yeah, you have from now until this evening when you get rear-ended by that car. See how that model works? It's an interesting question. About anything that happens in the next 1 hour, are you prepared to say about each and every one of those actions, including your thoughts, I do it again, and again, and again? Is there anything in high school you'd go back to do again? With pride? Yeah, I'd do that again. With joy, with fascination, with excitement. All right, let's go to another question. This one obviously is a very difficult one, but we have to ask it because we're studying Faust. How do you keep in your life from getting bored? I mean, let's be fair. Most of the people who are double your age, you can do the quick math. And guess what? That puts you pretty close to 50. Most of the people in your life who you've ever met who are that old, how do they look at their life and their day? What kind of energy do they have? What kind of joy do they possess? What kind of passion do they still have? Question, are they bored? How do you keep from getting bored in your life? What do you think, Ms. Ramos? Is there an answer to that question right now? I mean, obviously, you haven't lived more than 20 years, so you can't really speak to what it's like to live 20 more. But how do you think you do it? Is there a secret, do you think, so you don't get bored?
You just have to find happiness.
Find happiness. Did Faust find happiness, do you think, in his life?
I don't know if he found it or he realized that he already had it.
Ms. Eves makes an interesting observation. What if happiness isn't what you find? What if happiness is like discovering your feet? You've always had it. You were just unaware that you had it. It's like you went out in search for the thing you thought you would find, realizing the whole time you actually had it the whole time. Yeah, but what do you say to the person who says, well, that's easy to say when you're young, but then life gets really complicated and yucky, and then lots of terrible things happen. And then after a while, you start to get depressed about the whole fact of getting up in the morning. It ain't much fun anymore. It's kind of a pain. Is there any way to remain content, happy, satisfied in your life as you get older? Or do we know that inevitably it's coming for everybody? The opening lines of Faust is coming. Which is why so many people last night sat in front of their TV, bored, just waiting for the time to go away so they could go to bed, so they could get up, so they could do it all over again.
Maybe they're sitting like that because they lack the self-awareness that other people have when they are able to accept the fact that we all gotta die. So maybe having that self-awareness and being able to live your life without the regrets and just knowing, hey, you got one shot, just do it, is
fascinating. Are you fascinated by the fact, Ms. Damiano, that one of the first requests of Faust is to be made younger? This is in an age, Goethe writes in an age before what we know today as, of course, all of the surgeries that people get to try and make themselves look younger. Why do you think Faust wants to be made younger?